everyone. Welcome to today's episode of Scholarchit Chat. I'm your host Chidinma, and I'm super excited about this episode today. Because we're going to be diving into a topic that is very close to many of us, especially those who just graduated, right? So previously we've talked about how to enter into graduate school. How do you make your application ready? What are the key things that will help you stand out in your application? But today we're going to be taking a very different trajectory. So how do you navigate from graduating to landing your first job and just thriving in your career? This is very important because oftentimes people focus more on getting into the journey and then not really think about, okay, when I get into graduate school, what happens afterward? And I'm happy that I'm not going to be having this conversation today alone. So joining me is my friend and fellow University of York alum, Olaseyinka Shobande Ola. Correct me if I did not get the pronunciation very well. So I'm going to let Ola introduce himself a little bit and then we'll get straight into our conversation. But it promises to be a very fun one for us. So hi Ola, tell us a little bit about yourself and then we'll take it from there.
All right, Chidinma, thank you very much. And I'm happy to be here actually. University of York, like Chidinma as well. Studied the same thing, Masters of Public Health. Finished last year, September. So prior to that, for my first degree, I studied pharmacy. So basically I made a transition from pharmacy to public health. Not just public health to data analysis. I'm sure we'll get into that, much later. So yeah, and currently working as a data scientist, within a local authority here in the UK, and I'm working within the public health space actually. So it's me. That's been my journey so far in brief.
Thank you very much, Ola. And yeah, you're absolutely right. We're going to get into the details and nitty-gritties about what you studied and grad, and it's very interesting that we both studied at the University of York. I have a personal bias towards York. I think York is the best place. And I also enjoyed my time at the University of York. So let's start from the beginning, Ola. So what made you transition from pharmacy to public health? I think it's a very huge transition. So like what guided that thought? Why did you study?
Yeah, so you're right. First of all, it was a very huge transition for me. Come on, I spent 5 plus X, with all this track. So you invest that time and that effort studying a course, and then you come out with so much aspiration, with so much, hope for, now it's time to get out there, make the most out of it, and get the most out of what you studied. I didn't quite go, did my internship, got done with that, did my NYC as well, got done with that, and then you start to see the landscape, and then you start to realize this is very far from how I imagined it in my head, how I pictured it in my head, right? And what I mean by that is just the expectations, right? How exciting I thought it was. And I think for me personally, one of the most disappointing things was, there was no trajectory, for me in at that particular time in pharmacy. I hate being in a situation or a place where I can basically, project and be able to say, what, this is what I'm doing now, this is what I'm going to want to be doing in the next 1 year, this is what I'm going to want in the next 2 years, and whatnot. So I could not just see those layers, right? And that trajectory. And then it became a thing of, and I did not like the options that were available to me as well as regards the practice, right? I wanted something more challenging, at some point in my practicing, right? So I worked in the community, pharmacy, I worked in the hospital as well. And, at some point, both of them just became very routine for me, nothing really. It was just like an everyday thing, wake up, go, and then that's it, So I think for me, I'll start with public health, right? I stumbled into public health when someone introduced me to an NGO. And I was like, okay, well, let me give it a try. Let me see what. Told me about the NGO and then encouraged me to basically enroll for their research training that they had at the time. It's going to, be like. So nonchalantly, I enrolled for the research training with the NGO. And then I started to see health from a very different perspective, right? From the public health lens, from the population lens, right? Whereas if you're working as a medical personnel, you're mostly seeing it from, I would say, a microscope, if that's the best way to put it. But I started to see a very different lens, right? I started to see it from a very, very different, from the public health landscape, how it's more about how you prevent, diseases, how to tackle various, factors or various, what we call them, wider health determinants, right, that affect our health. And then I actually started to fall more in love with that concept and fall more in love with, and then I think another basically also made me fall in love with that field was, because I started to get more involved in community outreach programs as well, and I started to really, really, really see what people were going through health-wise, right, as a community, not just as an individual. So it was just an wholesome journey for me, really, and I loved it. And I'm like, starting, and then through the training, I started to understand how you can basically carry out research, to gather your evidence appropriately, come up with evidence that you can basically feed into solutions like that. As hard as it was, coming to a final decision of like, oh yeah, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to just make this switch, I realized that was because pharmacy just never even gave it a try. Because I was now in this, right? Data analysis came along the journey, along my research journey, right? Because I started research about how important data analysis was to the whole process, right? And how it was basically to acquire that skill, resources or whatever to help you with that aspect of your research, right? So that's how I started work with the data analytical aspect of things, and involving research and data analysis. Anything data analysis, anything Excel, anything SPSS. I gave it a try. You know what? Let's see what that world is like, right? So I got into that world, and I actually started to really fall in love with, train myself, so to say, right? Take courses here, there. Then I came to the decision of when I had to do my master's in public health,
Wow.
So that's how I made the switch from pharmacy to public health,
That's very beautiful, Ola. It's very evident that you're very passionate about public health. And, because, it's so evident by the way you're talking. And yeah, I mean, I feel like most generally, lots of things that happens within our career. Two things I would say that I got from what you said, Russia, and then it's probably not best for you to go ahead with it. And then the second thing I really picked up from what you said was about being able to put yourself out there, taking courses, like honing yourself to be better, particularly within a trajectory that you're interested in, because it's not just enough that you have a certificate in this, it is also important that you get yourself ready. So it's very beautiful to see how you fell in love with public health, or hear it rather. So that's very fascinating. So let's talk about like how you transitioned from graduate school to your job search. I'm not going to talk about how you got into graduate school, how the process, because we have other episodes from other speakers that handle that. So I'll talk about your job search, or ask you questions about your job search directly. We have guests or people that listen to us from different areas, but how did you start? How was that for you? What were the steps you took to land you where you are today?
The right answer to that question is very different for people according to maybe the stage or the level that they find themselves in, basically, right? And what I mean by that is the answer I'd probably, or the way I'd probably, is just about to get into graduate school. Very different from the way I'd answer someone that is just finishing graduate school, right? And the kind of advice that I'll maybe give that person. But I think the easiest way for me to answer this question is just talking about my experience, highlighting the things that I did right, and then highlighting the things that I was in school, if I was going to make something out of public health. And again, as I said, I should say I was very interested in data analysis, right? So I felt I was going to make a pathway for myself in this particular field. I would need to like really invest my time, my energy, and my resources into my academics, right? Which is not a bad. I will just tell you the problem. I'll tell you the problem with that, as I progress my journey, right? So I did that. Most of my time, right, went into my academic studies, So during my time in school, I think at the beginning, as usual, you get into the UK, the first jobs that you get to do, obviously, I can remember working some restaurants here, there. So that was my first set of jobs that I got in the UK. And then eventually, right, after a couple of months, I eventually got a job as a pharmacy dispenser, which took than expected actually, because my mentality was, I'm a pharmacist, this should be easy, right? I should easily get a job as a pharmacy dispenser. But that took months, that took longer than I expected. And I'll say for that particular journey, right, the thing I learned about that journey to getting that particular job was, it really doesn't matter what your qualification is back home, right? When applying for a job here in the UK, right, you have to requirements of that particular job. If you don't reflect the requirements of that particular job, you are not just going to get it. Simple as that. No matter what you think you have done in that particular field, no matter the qualifications that you think you have, right, it will tell you that this is the person we are looking for and this is what we want the person to be able to do. If that is not vetted in your CV, and articulate cover letter, you just won't get the job. So me, I just stay a job for pharmacy dispenser, pharmacy assistant, and then I'll just bring everything that I've done back home, thinking that, come on, I've done more than this in my practice, and then I'll just write it on my CV, write it on my cover letter, thinking that it's supposed to blow them to even see that I've done way beyond what they're asking for, right? Turned out not this, basically. So I'll say through that particular journey, that was the biggest thing that I learned. Till I made that adjustment, right? Till I started speaking just the job requirements, right? What was required of me of that particular job. That was when I eventually, got a pharmacy dispensary job, right? So I'll say that's one. Second key thing I'll say from that journey as well is severance, right? So where I actually got the job, actually that was my, I think, third attempt at the same place. I remember the first time I applied, I sent my CV, I sent my cover letter. I did not get, I got a rejection. And then the second time I applied to the same place again, I got a rejection, right? And then I'm thinking, oh, come on, what do they want, right? And then I think or whatever months later again, an opening opened at the same place. And I was just thinking to myself that what's the whole point of trying, really? I've gotten to rejections already, why even try? But I don't know, something just nudged me and just said, well, what do you have to lose if you don't try? You might as well just send it in. If you don't get at least, okay, you keep it moving. So I honestly was sending a CV because I think I was even very busy there, and I think I was maybe writing an exam. But something just kept on nudging me that just send this, just send your CV and cover letter across, right? And I did that, and I sent it, and I just completely forgot about the job because, as I said, I've gotten rejected twice already. I was not even expecting anything else. I just got a message inviting me for an interview, right? And I'm like, oh, okay. This is surprising. People did not have that level of confidence that, I was going to get picked for the job. So I just showed up interview, and I can remember a couple of I didn't get a call back from them. So after a couple of weeks, I just got a call from them out of the blues, and I got the job offer, and I was so surprised. So I'll say that's the second key thing, perseverance from that. So, and this one, the process was going to be a lot more demanding. It was a lot more, data analysis, right, in public health, because that is what I really wanted to do, and that's why. But now I really wanted to make the move for this particular process, I think I was done in September. I was done with my dissertation in September. I sat down with a friend of mine, right, that was already applying for such jobs while we were in school. 100 CVs already, applying for this kind of jobs, right? I'm not even joking, and he eventually got one when we were just about to finish school, right? And so I just sat down with him after we were done with our dissertation, and I was like, and then he was just telling me about his journey, about, everything that he had been through, trying to get a job in public health, right? And then he showed me all this. So to tell you, I thought I was joking when he said, right? Till I saw the folder myself, and I saw all the CVs letters that he had sent out. So he just, this is what he has been through. And, so he told me, let me give you a few things that I basically learned, right, to help you. So you maybe don't make the same that I made at the beginning of my journey, right? And he gave me very good as he told me how to basically shape my CV for such jobs, and how to basically also write my cover letter for such a job, right? So applying for this kind of roles, my cover letter became a very big deal in maybe some of the pointers that he gave me, right? That helped me through my own job journey. So he said there are always two parts to such kind of jobs, right? The job description, person specification. And that for your cover letter, right, you have to properly articulate how you meet every person specification, or at least 90% of person specification in your cover letter, right? So you take all your person, put it in a document, and basically state, how you've met that particular requirement and always give an example. Then your job description should be well articulated within your CV. And then on my way to where I stay, right? Just before I got on the train, I got a call from them, and then the first thing they said was, unfortunately, we've gone with someone else, and it felt as if they just got that. And I can remember feeling very down and very, unwilling to go back to that process just because of what it took me to get to that interview stage, right? If you've ever written a cover letter in UK, you know that. So I didn't get this particular one on this occasion, and I can remember for about 2 weeks or so, I just did not even
very true.
When you go to an interview, you want to make sure that you get the job, right? Check any more job applications and what. But this when again reminded me of his journey and what he went through, right? And he said, look, Ola, I've been at this for months. So I mean,
all in a very concise way. You really shared things. I think part of the things I really liked about what you said is starting early. That's definitely very, very important. Still also, I know that when I graduated, at least I know one of my, not even one, like I think 1 or 2 people already had a job before graduation. And in my head, I was like, when were you guys applying for this job? I thought we were all coming to class together and reading together. I know a friend of mine, in fact, as of when we were writing our dissertation, she already had a job waiting for her so that once she's done, she'll just transition to the job. And I was like, wow, you're thinking way ahead of time. So what you said about starting early, and it's, I think maybe a challenge we have, in our system, our educational system in Nigeria, it's like, don't worry, just study. When you're done studying, you can come out and do something else. But you can really do both. So while you're studying, you can still be looking out, just could be something, your favorite activity in the afternoon or evening. Come back from school, like just throw in a CV, one or two there. Nothing really at least then the stakes are not so high, right?
Questions that they're asking you, and then you know how, you should answer each question. You get better through the process. So I think the biggest lesson I should have started that journey earlier, but thank God that I got the job but that was because I had a lot of information from someone that already started the process before I did. Because if I had to figure it out, believe me, I also would have had to send out maybe 100 applications. I should have started that journey earlier, but thank God that I got the job when I did. But that was because I had a lot of information from someone that already started the journey earlier than I. It's a thing. There is nobody that I don't think maybe got a job at their first attempt here I could be wrong, but I don't know of anybody. Just persevere through the process, right? You have to pick yourself up. You don't have a choice. So I mean, I understand some rejections can be very painful, especially that, you did well enough to have gotten this particular job, but you just have to pick yourself up and go again, apply again. We are used to writing CV. We are used to that. So just pick yourself up, put yourself out there again, and then just keep applying. I always say keep up. It takes 1 year. It just takes 1 year, really, and that's it.
That's really amazing. You shared so many things, right? Like, in a very concise way. You really shared things. I think part of the things I really liked about what you said is starting early. That's definitely very, very important. Still also, I know that when I graduated, at least I know one of my, not even one, like I think 1 or 2 people already had a job before graduation. And in my head, I was like, when were you guys applying for this job? I thought we were all coming to class together and reading together. I know a friend of mine, in fact, as of when we were writing our dissertation, she already had a job waiting for her so that once she's done, she'll just transition to the job. And I was like, wow, you're thinking way ahead of time. So what you said about starting early, and it's, I think maybe a challenge we have, in our system, our educational system in Nigeria, it's like, don't worry, just study. When you're done studying, you can come out and do something else. But you can really do both. So while you're studying, you can still be looking out, just could be something, your favorite activity in the afternoon or evening. Come back from school, like just throw in a CV, one or two there. Nothing really at least then the stakes are not so high, right? So even if you don't get anything, then like it's fine. At least you know the process, you know what it looks like, so that when you're done, you have your better position. I think another thing that you said a lot of things. I'll just stop it. I'll allow you to do more of the talking. One of the things you said that really stood out for me was asking for feedback. That's what your friend said. And that was very, very important. I know in my experience, I think there was this job I applied for. I was going to go to South Africa. I was so excited. I did everything. Like I did everything within my human power. I was going to make a PowerPoint presentation. I stayed up all night, prepared my PowerPoint presentation. I even had to look for the slide, like the color theme of the organization, look for their previous PowerPoint. Just I did everything. So after my presentation, it went pretty well. And long story short, they told me, "Oh, we're not able to progress with your application." I felt so bad. Like I felt the whole world was against me, And I think that when the HR person sent me the feedback, I really wanted to know, like, what did I do wrong? And because that's very helpful. Number one is that you help you learn. Two, also, sometimes it's really not your fault, right? And it's not like you didn't do anything, and that helps you as an individual. So I remember just reaching out to her. I was like, "Hey, like I just really want an honest feedback. So that was when she was like, "Hey, like you did amazingly well. You were like one of the top participants. The only thing is, which I strongly believe was true, the area that they were recruiting for was not like the opportunity they had wasn't my primary expertise, right? So they wanted someone, it's like maybe looking for someone who has more data analysis skills, and I have more of the conceptual skills. So that made sense. So it wasn't a thing of me, it was a thing of fitness, right? So my CV, my presentation, everything was good. So that's very, very helpful. So I want you to talk a little bit about, like, in terms of, you talked about your friend, right? So what else, like in terms of LinkedIn? I know oftentimes people tell people, "Oh, go on LinkedIn, their jobs." So was LinkedIn a thing for you? Like, did social media come in handy? Were there jobs waiting for you on LinkedIn? Just Ola, apply and you get me. So how did that come into play in your own experience?
So, I think per your location, or per the country you're in, right? You're going to have different job sites, so to say, right? And yes, sure, LinkedIn was one of them. So but with LinkedIn, you have to be very, very deliberate about how you set up your LinkedIn to get the kind of job notifications that you're interested in. So one of the things that I did was I appropriately, went to the job option on my LinkedIn, and I, put in the kind of jobs that I was interested in, right? And then, filled the entire application, and then location as well, the sort of locations that I was also interested in. And me as a graduate student, you don't get to pick location. And me as a graduate student, you don't. And yeah, so made that adjustment, and then of course set the notification, right? So that they just sending notifications of those jobs when they are available and when they pop and everything. So I was always getting those notifications via my email. And I did the same thing for other sites as well, Indeed, because NHS it's a major. So here in the UK, we have a popular site also known as Track, right? So here you get a lot of jobs from NHS, being posted on Track, all sorts of jobs, right? So that's a very popular one here in the UK because NHS it's a major organization everywhere around the UK. And then I have another notification from various other sites as well. I think the thing I would say is you just have to make sure that they are all set to the kind of jobs that you are looking for, so that you're not just getting notifications of jobs that you are not even interested. All the notifications were directed towards everything around, pharmacy dispensary, pharmacy assistant, pharmacy this, pharmacy that, right? And then when I left that, I was now looking for a job in and around data analysis in public health, right? So all my notifications, I went to reset them to reflect, data analytical jobs within public health, which they're in different forms, right? We have public health intelligence, we have population health analysts, we have health analysis in policy, health analysis in that. So yeah, you just have to look for key terms in your job area, right? Identify key terms, and then use those key terms to set your notification. And once you get notifications.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think I have like maybe two more questions and then we'll wrap up. It's been a very beautiful conversation. So when you were talking, you made mention of your cover letter. You've talked about the cover letter. So maybe I'll ask a little bit about the CV, right? Especially as an international student, like what were the steps that you took to make your CV stand out, right? Was there a particular format? Maybe in Nigeria, oftentimes people have like name, date of birth, state of origin. Was there a particular format that you worked out your CV on? And then the second question, I asked you the two in one, was interview proper. How did you prepare for your interviews? I know you've mentioned like a couple of interviews. How did you prepare for them? Were there things that you did? Did you practice? Were there videos that you watched? So just kind of walk us through that process of your CV and preparing for your interview itself.
So for the CV process, so I think this depends on the kind of job that you're applying for, right? And your field. Because for my own field, public health, your cover letter most of the time is actually more important than your CV for a lot of the jobs that I apply for. That might be very different for maybe some other person. It's really, that has to maybe tech or some other person in finance or in law or this thing. It might be very different. But either way, you still have to write both of them very well and have to structure them very well. So for my CV, it's really your profile, right? That has to, because it's the first thing they'll probably read on your CV, right? It has to be brief, right? And then it has to give a snapshot of yourself in such a way that it capture, the attention of the person reading it. And in such a way that it's also reflecting, it's saying, it's speaking about yourself, right? But in a way that job that you're applying for. And how you can do that by using key terms. We always talk about key terms. It's very important. You have to be able to identify key terms from your job description. Like me, for instance, right? If I'm applying for a data analytical role, I look out for key terms, and key terms that data analysis in public health, some of the key terms that we look out for that are basically common, right? Communication skills, the kind of tools that you basically use for data analysis. We also have your statistical ability to a degree, and then your ability to work with teams and ability to basically work within time. We have key things that we look out for, right? Common things in the kind of job that you're applying for. So you have to be able to identify those key terms and make sure that they stand out properly in your CV, the job profile, not just the job profile, but in your pointers, right? The things I have done at each job. Those key terms are very, very important. Don't just go off writing what you feel like writing or what you think should be on your CV. What you are writing on your CV must reflect the job description. Those key terms must be there. And I think another, and if you're applying for a data analytical role, for instance, right, let that be the job theme of your CV. If you're applying for a different role, let that also be the job theme of your CV. I will not be applying for a data analyst role and then I have pharmacy as my job theme. No. So you have to make sure that your job theme on your CV is also reflecting, it's the same thing, in fact, categorically the same thing as the job that you have. And then, now this is where it starts to get maybe a bit tricky, because most of the time, your experience, right, or what you have done might not exactly, what the word articulates the job description, right? Then you just have to find a way to bridge both of them. You have to find a way to make sure that your job experience is reflecting that job description. You just have to find a way. Like me, if I'm to make mention of, say, maybe when I did my pharmacy internship now, right? And maybe I'm applying for a public health role. I'm not going to be talking about, the jobs that I dispense, how I dispense them according to the right dosage and all of that, right? I'll look for skills that I did within that role, right? That fits the job that I'm applying for. So for instance, for that particular role, it might maybe just be my communication skills. That fits the role that I'm applying for. So that is what I'm going to elaborate under that particular role. And then, so you have to be able to identify those. Like, I can remember when I was speaking to the things that I did as a pharmacy dispenser, right, in my CV. Everything that I put on, it would always be skills that were likened to the job that I was applying for. So you have to find that. And also you have to find a way to articulate job roles that are similar to the job that you're applying for as well. It's not always the easiest thing to do, but you just have to find a way, really. Now, I might have mentioned pharmacy intern somewhere else, right? But I can't mention that. I can't mention job roles that have to do with pharmacy 3 or 4 times in my CV. In a CV that I'm applying for job data analysis, I can't do that. It just won't fly, right? So the major job roles that I mentioned in your CV, make sure that you find the way for it to what you're applying for. So I think that's for CV. For interview, interview process, right? I think interview comes with practice, really. It comes with practice. So that's why I said start the job journey early enough, right? You never can tell. You might just get 1, 2, or 3 interviews, right? You sit across from the panel, you learn how they're asking you questions, you learn the kind of questions that they're asking you, and then you go back. If you don't get that job, don't worry about it. As you rightfully said, Chidinma, the right thing to do immediately is ask for a feedback. Always ask for a feedback. Very, very important. And they will give you a feedback. They won't necessarily give you at the CV stage, but at the interview stage, they will always give you a feedback. So for me, for the first one, I took the feedback, I went back, right? And I paid attention to the things that they mentioned to me. And some of the key things that you have to pay attention to is when they ask you a particular question, right? Always make sure that you're answering that question that they're asking you. I can remember sitting out through one time and asking a question. I started answering the question and then I drifted into another question, or I drifted into something else entirely, right? So try to make sure, as much as possible, you're answering the question that they're asking you, one. Second, make sure that you're giving an example, a very practical example to the question you're answering, right? Don't just give a knowledge-based answer, give a practical answer. We have what is called the common process that we use here, the STAR process, is it? That we basically ask task, analysis, and results, right? So you have to give a situation, and then how you basically tackle that particular situation, and then you also have to give the results from the situation again, what were the outcomes of that particular situation. So always give an example. Don't just give a very bare or basic answer. They want to see what you have done, practically to reflect that question that they're asking you. So make sure that you always do that. And don't be scared to say as much as you want to say. In fact, most of the time, it's good when they even stop you, when they're the ones that stop you from talking.
Yeah.
So just talk, say everything as much as possible. It's better they stop you from talking rather than, maybe you give a very brief explanation that has no depth, and then you keep quiet and you're done, and then there's this awkward silence in the room, and they're looking at you like, that's all you have to say. So try to be your interview is the time for it to be very, very thorough, very, very thorough as much as possible, So I think do that. That's the key for the interview. Practice. Once you're out of the interview, I've gotten your feedback. Practice the feedback. Structure your answers. Have a template that you are using for your interview. Write the questions down. Have answers for those questions, and then just practice. And eventually, one report.
That's so beautiful, Ola. I feel like you've shared a lot of rich things really from the CV. I know one thing for CV, for instance, for those who are still in school, I know University of York has a careers office, and that goes back if you start really early, right? So you can, when you're done with your CV or cover letter, just go up to them and like, hey, these are the roles I'm looking to apply for. Here is my CV, here's my cover letter. Please, can you go over it? And I'm sure most schools in the UK, for instance, most schools, graduate schools, honestly, do have this, right? Where they
Yeah.
can help you, review. I also know that then also at the University of York, now this is the one I'm not very sure of for other schools, but the University of York had this, I think this free CV review. I think it's an ATS kind of thing. So you put in your CV automatically, like it gives you a feedback, gives you a score, gives you some feedback, and it's completely free for students that have an active number. So that's something that you can still use while you're still a student. So, like I said, it goes back to really starting very early. Once you start early, you're able to circumvent a lot of things, have enough time to make mistakes, such that when you're done, you're able to have a very huge outlook for you. So thank you so much, Ola. One of the last things I want to highlight on what you said was, you really kept mentioning people, like how you reached out to people. Networking is very, very important. Honestly, it could be someone working in a particular place, like, hey, I'm leaving, or I know a friend of mine, when she was going to quit her job, she was like, oh, do I know anybody? They're currently looking for someone that will take up her position. So that's, I mean, if imagine you're her friend, you're going to get into that. So it's very important to network and share, and just put yourself out there. So I don't know, Ola, do you have any last words for anyone that is, maybe they're wrapping up writing their dissertation or thesis, and they're like, what does the future hold for me? What are your final words for them?
I understand the the anxiety and then the uncertainty that, okay, what, I'm about to be done, I'm about to get out there, what do I do? And I think it just goes back to a very important thing that you really just highlighted, right? Networking, asking questions. Ask as much questions, ask people around you. Chidinma, you can testify to this because, you did your MPH before I did mine, right? And
Yeah, yeah,
I think I started disturbing you even before I came to, New York, right? So
yeah,
ask people questions. Honestly, so I can't emphasize. See, you might have all the knowledge, right? But the thing is, you're in a new environment, you're in a new place. You really don't know much about the system. You really don't know much about how things are done in that particular environment. So you need to find out as much information as possible. You need to ask people questions. It can be one person sending a job to you that
mm,
you might even eventually get, It might
mm,
be one person giving you career advice, right? And I think I picked a course which was in practical clinical trials, right? As
yeah,
opposed to in further regression. And in my head at the time, I thought, the semester before that semester, I did regression analysis, and I thought that was enough knowledge for me. I thought, what else is there for me to know about regression? Just do the practical clinical trials because I was also interested in that, right? And
mm-hmm,
I told you I consulted with you on this particular situation, and then you told me what regression did for you, like taking that course, the kind of impact that it had
yeah,
on you and how important it was for you. And that made me actually consider changing my decision or just giving it an extra thought, right? And so I went back, thought about it. Okay, I do want to do secondary analysis. I am mostly interested in data analysis anyways. So I went back, I changed the course. And I can tell you that singular decision, the ripple effect that it basically had, right, on my dissertation, I had like a 90% in my dissertation because I did secondary analysis. And what I learned in that regression really came in handy for my
mm,
dissertation. And even for my job search as well, sitting through interviews, being able to articulate, those analytical processes during my interviews really helped me out a lot as well as, So I think it just goes back to it really. Ask questions, talk to people, find out things, and yeah, don't be, and just keep at it really. You just have to persevere through everything, the job search process. It can be very frustrating at times, but you just have to persevere through it. So I think, those key things really will help you. There's going to be a light at the end of that tunnel eventually.
Thank you so much, Ola. You really shared a lot, and it's been amazing listening. And I'm really grateful to God that I'm part of this story. The money you owe me is increasing every single day. I'm kidding. But thank you so much for joining us today, everyone. We hope you got valuable insights from our conversation. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. We've got more exciting content coming your way, so stay tuned. And remember, you've got this. So whether you're finishing your dissertation or you're stepping into your first job, just take it one step at a time, as Ola has said. And don't ever take rejections as the end of the world. They could just be redirections. So thank you very much once again, and we'll catch you in the next episode. Bye. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Scholarchit Chat. If you found our conversation insightful and enjoyable, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe to stay updated. We've got a lot more in store and we don't want you to miss out.
We are always diving into topics like this: academics, scholarship, professional life, and the international student experience. It's what makes Scholarchit Chat your go-to podcast for a fresh perspective. Also, don't keep all this wisdom to yourself. Share this episode with your friends and family who could benefit from it. We are building a community of learners and would love for you to be a part of it.
Your thoughts matter to us. We want to hear from you. Drop your comments and questions in the chat, or send your questions, suggestions, and comments to scholarchitchat@gmail.com. Your input helps shape the future of Scholarchit Chat.